Minister, colleagues, we're having an economic discussion, but we're having it in the context of a health emergency where 769 people, as of the latest figures, have passed away, 250 in the north of the country, and we have to think of their families and their situations today and the questions that they will have that need to be answered. But equally, we also have to have a debate about the consequences that this is having on our economy. And I know that there are discussions at EU level, and I note the Chancellor's remarks, the German Chancellor's remarks, that this is the biggest test of the EU, and let's hope that the EU is up to that test. The EU was set up in the context of the division of Europe after the Second World War, and now if we are to face that biggest test, then it should challenge in the spirit of European cooperation, and not some of the game playing that seems to be going on at the moment, and I wish you well there. Minister, there are a number of specific areas we need. And to get our country back up and running economically, testing and the notion of testing, which I know is a matter for the Minister for Health, but you must also have an input into it in terms of the kind of level of testing that you have seen and that you're getting advice on to allow the economy of the country to return, to allow government, to allow work to return. Specifically, issues I would look for clarification is those over the age of 66 who are not getting the pandemic payment. They are not looking for the full 350. There are people who were working up until the middle of March. They want their incomes to be brought up to the 350 and are willing to go back to work and want to go back to work as soon as possible. In relation to this, every single sector is facing challenges, but there are sectors in farming and in our fishing communities who are facing a particular challenge. They are part of the response to this. They are being hailed as for the response, but they are facing massive pressures, and they need clarity because they do not have control over their supplies. They do not have control over their production. That is in somebody else's hands. When you look at the response in Northern Ireland in terms of business grants to small businesses and to the hospitality, they're giving grants. They're not giving low-cost loans. And a low-cost loan at 4.5% is no such thing when you consider what the cost of funds are at the moment. And if we are to get small businesses back up and running, they will not, and some have already been told, that they will not get facilities from their banks. They will not get an extension of their overdraft. If we are serious about getting things up and running, it will have to go into a low-cost loan scheme. That is what's being rolled out, as I said, in Northern Ireland, also in Denmark, where we are looking at closely at the moment. You mentioned yesterday about tapering the payments. And instead of tapering, can you link the reform of the payments into reforming the wage subsidy scheme? Because the more you reform the wage subsidy scheme, the greater a chance you have of keeping a link between employer and employee. And if that link is strong and that link is supported, then there will be less need for the pandemic unemployment payment. And I note all of the changes you've made, and you've made some very good changes and responded, but more changes are necessary in order to keep people there. Ara tá five more, of course, the Gaeltacht freshen are entire parts of the economy of the Gaeltacht regions of this country have just been completely wiped out by the necessary decision not to proceed. I know Minister Kine is working on it, but indications will have to be given early on in relation to the supports that are available. Finally, Minister, we just acknowledge the massive work that has gone in on the government's part, but also on the part of frontline workers, HSE workers and staff in retail and service operations right across the country. We will be in a far worse position were it not for their efforts.